Mom just texted.
All right. We are live. Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, everyone. Okay, I think we might need everyone to put their headphones in.
I think that was me. It had like another window open. It had 2 date night windows, but I closed one. Did that work?
I think so. I think we're all good now.
It's
the reverb is gone. Yay! Okay, we're all good. Welcome to date night. Thank you to everyone who has been coming. We see all of you in the comments saying hello from your locations, and we're so happy that all of you came to join us tonight. So on tonight's date night, we have these 3 wonderful authors. Most of you probably already know all about them, but I'm going to introduce them, of course, at first. Just a little thing. If you have questions throughout the event, you can leave them in the Ask a Question box should be at the bottom of your screen. Leave a question and we will go through and try to answer them a little bit later in the event. Yeah, and Hannah from the bookstore is in the comments and will be in there hanging out with you guys too. So first, our guest tonight, first up we have Kate. I'm like, Kate Clayborn.
Hi, everybody.
Kate Clayborn lives in Virginia, where she spends her days reading and talking about all kinds of great books. Kate loves to hear from and connect with readers on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and that is Double Reader nominee Kate Clayborn. We also have award-winning author Sonali Dev, who writes Bollywood-style love stories that let her explore issues faced by women around the world while still indulging her faith in a happily ever after. Sonali lives in the Chicago suburbs with her very patient, often amused husband and 2 teens who demand both patience and humor and the world's most perfect dog. Priscilla Oliveras is a USA Today bestselling author, 2018 RWA Rita double finalist, and 4-time Golden Heart finalist who writes contemporary romance with a Latinx flavor. Proud of her Puerto Rican Mexican heritage, she strives to bring authenticity to her novels by sharing her culture with her readers. And if you want to find out more about all of them, follow them on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and go to their websites to learn more about them and their books. So hi, everyone. Welcome.
Thanks for all the nice comments on the side.
Yes, thank you so much. Hi to everybody.
Yeah.
So first up, I want each of you to talk a little bit about your most recent or your upcoming book. So for Kate, that would be Love Lettering. Pris, An Island Affair, and Sonali, Recipe for Persuasion. So, Kate, do you want to talk a bit about all of these are contemporary romances. Mm-hmm. And Kate, do you want to tell us a bit about your book?
Yeah, sure. So Love Lettering is a New York City set romance, and it tells the story of Meg, who is a pretty accomplished hand letterer. And she's got this bad habit of hiding secret messages in the work that she does. And as it turns out, somebody shows up to the shop that she works in, a groom for a wedding that she did a job for, and he found one of her codes. So it's the story about kind of a letters gal and a numbers guy and how they get together through walks in New York City. And I really loved writing it, and I hope it's giving people some comfort when they can't spend a lot of time outside walking. So, and I'm writing something new that will be out next year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Pris, your book just came out. Do you want to tell us a bit about Island Affair?
Sure. Island Affair came out the end of April, so it's been out for a couple weeks, and it is, when I kind of pitched it to Kensington, I kind of said it's like I write about a lot of like familia drama I write with Latinx characters. So there's a lot of familia throughout. They're all getting in each other's business, whether they want each other or want each other to be or not. So it's kind of like a little bit of the emotion and humor in This Is Us kind of meshed with Blue Bloods, if Blue Bloods were firefighters instead of NYPD, because the Navarro familia, they're all firefighter paramedics. And Island Affair also has a twist, kind of like The Wedding Date. There's a fake relationship. And so kind of the blurb is Sarah Vance is a social media influencer, and she has come to Key West for a mandatory family vacation. And she already knows that it's going to be, a little bit uncomfortable. She always feels like the black sheep amongst her family. And she arrives and gets a phone call from her flaky boyfriend that he's decided to no-show. And so the last thing she wants is to show up to their rental home having been dumped, already feeling uncomfortable. And she meets Luis Navarro, who is, his nickname is San Navarro, like Saint Navarro. He's got a savior complex that he's got to learn to deal with. And he's actually just been told by his boss there's some stuff going on in his life that he doesn't want to deal with. And his captain has told him, look, you've got some time off. I don't want to see you here at the station for the next 7 days until you get your head on straight. So he's got 7 days to kill. She needs somebody to pretend to be her fake boyfriend, almost fiance, for 7 days. And Luis crazily agrees. And so the fun ensues. And I guess part of what I'm really excited about the book, I grew up in Key West, junior high and high school. And so I've wanted to set a book in Key West. Actually, my very first book I ever wrote was set in Key West, but it's like not good for a whole bunch of reasons. And so Island Affair and the Keys to Love series is kind of a little bit like a love letter to, or just a chance to bring people home with me. So I'm really excited about saying like, welcome to Key West with the series.
Oh, awesome. And Sonali.
Hey. Hi, everyone. So this is Recipe for Persuasion, and it comes out in 2 weeks. It comes out 26th of May. And Luis is one of my favorite heroes that I have read recently from Island Affair. And of course, Reed is my secret boyfriend from Love Letter. So can we just talk about those books? No. Recipe for Persuasion is the second book in my Raje's series, who are these politically ambitious Indian Americans in the Bay Area. So the series is set during the gubernatorial race, where the oldest son in the family is running for California governor. This book is about Ashna, who has for 10 years been trying to save her dead father's restaurant. It's a fine dining Indian restaurant in Palo Alto. And as a last-ditch effort, she allows her best friend to pull her into this Food Network show called Cooking with the Stars, which is like Dancing with the Stars, only with chefs and celebrities. And of course, she gets the celebrity she gets stuck with is the guy she dumped in high school, because it is a Persuasion. It's inspired by Jane Austen's Persuasion. So she gets stuck with this celebrity, who of course is a World Cup winning soccer player from Brazil. So we have a Brazilian soccer player, people. Not hot at all, and basically he believes that she dumped him back in high school because of familial pressure, and is there for closure. And of course, that doesn't work out really well for him. and it is also I think as much as it is a love story between Ashna and Rico, it is also a love story between Ashna and her mother, who's kind of done the flip of this thing in her youth, where she was also in love with a man very young, and is denied the opportunity to be with him by her very overbearing and autocratic family. And so she's married off to Ashna's father, who is this Indian prince. whom she doesn't want to be with. So it's a little bit of an exploration of what happens when women say, no, I will not capitulate. I will not, compromise and put my head down for the good of the family and go with something I don't want. And so when she takes that stand, Ashna is the collateral damage, because through her childhood, she, gets to live with this horrible marriage between her parents. So it's also the mother and daughter finding their way back to each other. So that's it, and it's up for pre-order, and it is out in 2 weeks.
Yay! Yeah. And you can pre-order from Loyalty Books.
Yes, please.
So thank you all for that. So to go back to something that Sonali touched on, Kate. So Kate and I have both been obsessed with a show called Crash Landing on You.
Me too.
And I know someone's going to say it, and yes, this entire date night is just my way of getting everyone to watch Crash Landing on You.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That's the only reason for it. No, it is because I love all of you, and I want to chat with you. But so we, as everyone who has watched it knows, Captain Ree, who is very, uptight, reserved. And so when I started watching that show, I immediately texted Kate and said, "Oh my God, you have to watch this show." But so that brings us to Reed. So I have two questions. The first question is, on a scale of 1 to 5 Captain Rees, what does Reed rate on that scale? And the second question is, can you talk a little bit about the appeal of the uptight, stern hero?
Oh man, my favorite topic. Well, I would say Reed is a 5 because he is really emotionally repressed, but also has a really tender and soft heart. And the other thing I would say is that he's really noble. So that was my favorite part of writing Reed. I wanted to write a hero that I thought was truly heroic. So somebody who was really noble and sort of lived by a strong code. And I think that's one reason that I really loved the Crash Landing on You. So a 5. And what do I think is the appeal? I think that I like reading romances where character is revealed slowly. So everybody who knows my books, I like a slow burn. And I'm very proud to like a slow burn. But one thing I like about slow burns is how they kind of slowly reveal things about characters that are unexpected. And so there's a real pleasure in watching a very stern hero sort of reveal his softer side. And I'm real trash for that every time. So I like writing it and I like reading it. And I also think that often those books are pleasurable to read because they sort of speak to something in our culture about sort of like emotional work that we often do to sort of help people share their feelings. And so, I don't know, I just am always attracted to stories like that.
Awesome, thank you. And speaking of noble and heroic, so Pris, your hero is a firefighter. He has a bit of a savior complex. Can you talk a little bit about the fun of writing this kind of character, and particularly placing him in the fake dating category, the fake dating trope? Because for me, when I started reading it, I really got these. Does everyone remember that movie, A Walk in the Clouds?
Yes.
And so I was like, oh yes, like I feel like it's a particular subset of the fake dating trope is the walk in the clouds, where kind of these people meet. It's a bit of damsel in distress and savior complex, but like in a really good, fun way.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that and writing that, how you had fun with that particular trope?
It was way out of Luis's norm to do the lie, the whole thing. So from the beginning,
Yeah.
like he doesn't feel that comfortable. And I think when I know when he first says yes, he's thinking, I'm going to be able to talk her out of this, you know, and then he soon realizes, no, like she's taking notes and like she's serious about, and he goes with it. I think, I'm probably going to have a hard time because I just really love Luis. And I just fell in love with as I got to know him. I think his like what Kate was saying, like his nobleness. He's such a good guy. And I'll tell you, I've written a good guy hero before, and it was hard because he was such a good guy. I feel like Luis is a good guy, but with an edge because he's got a really strong wound from the past that he's not wanting to deal with. And the way he deals with it is by focusing on other people's need for like help and assistance and their problems. So that's part of the issue. And I think what I loved was his character arc, like is at some point Sarah has to tell him, look, I don't need a partner to save me. I need a partner who is going to be my partner, you know, like not picking me up or doing all the work, but allowing me to do some of the work for him as well. And so part of what I loved about writing him and writing his arc was knowing as the author that there was going to come a point where he was going to have to face, like he can't fix everybody else if he hasn't worked on fixing himself, you know, kind of. And that part of why maybe a relationship he had in the past wasn't as healthy, wasn't the right one, because he was just going into it as the savior, not as the equal. And that's what that's what he learns from Sarah. And so I just love that, probably because familia is important to me. And so it is like to the Navarro, you know, to the Navarros, they have their, similar to Blue Bloods, like they have their weekly mandatory. I don't care what's going on in your life, but it's dinner, it's familia dinner, and you're here, you know, that kind of thing. So I just love, but part of why someone asked me, why do I not write standalones and why do I write in series? Part of it is because I enjoy being in their story world and in their and hanging out with them. Like even though I'm writing Ana Maria's now, I get to see Luis and Sarah, and I get to learn a little bit more about Enrique and that kind of thing. But so I guess I got off topic. But most specifically, what I loved about Luis is the good guy. But underneath that good guy, there, just like a lot of us, there's stuff that he's having to deal with, and also like a lot of us, there's stuff he doesn't want to face. And how does he try to get around facing it until there's that ultimatum, like deal with it or we're done kind of thing.
Nice. You touched on something that I'm going to go back to later, but before that, so Sonali, in your book, well, first, can you talk a little bit about the descended from royalty? Obviously, I'm interested in the royalty aspect. Can you talk a bit about? I want to come back to some other stuff in recipe for Persuasion and your writing in general, but can you talk a bit about writing this family descended from royalty and kind of what that meant for you, writing a South Asian family descended from royalty in contemporary romance?
So I think that you know, I mean, I have it's a very interesting space that Indian royalty inhabits because of colonization, right? Yeah. Because the way that it was done is you know, it was insidious how the British took over and how India was colonized, and they did this weird gray area thing where they called them princely states, and they allowed the kingdoms to keep their titles within their people, and keep their properties, and things like that, but they had no governing power except for collecting taxes for the British. And so, you know, so they had no, by the time, after 200 years of that, by the time India got independent, they were in this weird place where they had held on to their whole titling and being called His Royal Highness and the whole, like, you know, that within their bubbles that stayed, but on a larger national level, they had no political power. So and there's, I think, I mean, I don't want to say hundreds, but there's a lot of these small princely states in India, and they continue to live in this parallel universe almost. And of course, they dealt with it differently. There are there are those who went into politics and actually ran for office and continued the legacy that way. And so I kind of have always been fascinated by that. And of course, it comes with all this baggage of entitlement and privilege, and and trying to do good with it, and it being so different people handle that differently, as we see in any royal family. So I kind of think that, because when I was writing the Rajas, one of the things that I did want to explore is I wanted to explore the privilege in immigrant communities, because the only stories that we ever hear about immigrant communities, colored immigrant communities, is is poverty porn, is immigrant angst. It's almost like, for the past, like, I think until just very recently, every story was a story of pain. And so if it wasn't brown pain, and if it wasn't dislocation, and if it wasn't us standing in front of mirrors going, oh my gosh, it's awful to be a brown person, then it wasn't a story anyone wanted to hear. And I kind of wanted to explore the other side of it, because there is in a lot of immigrant communities a lot of privilege also that goes so there's economic privilege and education and those kinds of things in these really tight families, and of course this family exemplifies it. And one of the reasons also this family became the final setting that I chose was because I was doing a flip on Pride and Prejudice, and Trisha was, and it was a flip, and so Trisha, my heroine, so I was trying to write a female Mr. Darcy. And so I actually had to find, because Mr. Darcy is the epitome of privilege, right? Every privilege known to man in that culture, in that society, he had. And so I was trying to do that with an Indian American woman, which in itself was interesting. But so of course, what are the privileges we have in today's day and age? Being brilliant, being rich, being educated, being from a loving family, like all of those things which give us a step up. I was, kind of doing that. And then the history, right? Generational memory of royalty is one of the biggest privileges you can give anyone. And so kind of that's where that family became what it is on paper.
Cool. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just like watching. So one thing that, in most of the books I love, and in all of your books, are kind of these explorations of family and friendship. So one thing with Kate's book, when I started reading it, I came across something that I hadn't really seen very often in romance, which was like a really kind of in-depth exploration of a friendship gone wrong, or a friendship breakup in a way, that I found really interesting. And so can you talk a little bit about Meg and Sibby and kind of how they fit into this book? And also a little, I'll ask that later. Let's talk about Meg and Sibby.
Well, in the first series I wrote, the first series I wrote was a series about these three women that win the lottery together. And they are really good friends, and the friendship is really perfect in a lot of ways. It's not that they never call each other out or have disagreements, but it's just sort of you can tell that the friendship between these three women is really stable. And when I started to write love lettering, I knew that I wanted to write something a little different, because I think that friendship is sort of I think it's one of the most common sort of love relationships we have. And I write love stories. And so I thought, I want to tell a different kind of love story in this story as well. So I wanted to talk about two friends that have loved each other for a long time who have grown apart. And I think I related to this, and I don't know if you guys did, or if those of you who are listening did, but it's hard when you grow apart from a friend. It's really painful to break up with a friend, and it stays with you for a really long time. And so I wanted to write that story, and I kind of wanted to write a version of a happily ever after for that story too, where these two people kind of accept that they've changed, and they kind of find a way to go forward, even if it's not the same. So it was kind of therapeutic to write it. But I also, I hope it also spoke to people. And I also think that friendship in the book was part of how Meg learns that she has to learn to communicate differently, which is obviously what the book is about. So Meg sort of realizing that she has to get better at confrontation instead of kind of hiding things is something that she has to do with Sibby, just the same as she has to do with her romantic relationship as well. And so I wanted the message of the book to be, having sort of a complete life, a whole life involves having people outside your romantic relationship, and you have to do work for those relationships too. So yeah, Meg and Sibby, they broke my heart too.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is so special about how that is written is from the artist's perspective, right? They're both artists who are struggling. And we have all had the experience of having friends in the art world whose level of success is at a different point than our own. And that becomes a thing that gets in our way, even if we don't want to. And I love how that explores it, where Meg has kind of met her goals and Sibby's still struggling. And much as she doesn't want to, that becomes a thing that gets in their way. And that was just absolutely fabulous.
Oh, thanks.
I love someone said how like your story has helped them sort through friends and family and confrontations. That's so nice.
Oh, thank you all. Thanks so much.
No, I do think it was really helpful because I feel like in so many ways when we read romances, they can be ways for us to model behaviors. I mean, not this is like the thing, like, okay, if people play video games, does it make them violent? No, but I feel like with romance in particular, when it comes to the emotional modeling and figuring, like not saying, okay, I'm going to go hook up with a 500-year-old vampire. Which, I mean, if you find a 500-year-old vampire, definitely hook up with them because they probably have had time to learn some things. But
you might have them have to gnaw through your pregnant belly, and that's not pleasant.
Oh my God, I could talk about that for hours. I'm not going to talk about it. But I feel like that. I don't know if has everyone seen that Twilight movie? I feel like that was one of the best horror movies about but we won't get into the Twilight Zone. But just I do feel
what I like to say, like within our novels, and Kate's novel is another good example of it, but it's an example of how healthy relationships can help us, in our lives, right? Like if the right people are around us, what are the things that we have to do, that we have to learn how to do, or that the individuals in the books have to learn how to do to have those healthy relationships around them? So what I like, to me, that's the beauty of the romance genre. It doesn't matter, vampire, mermaid, whatever, firefighter, whatever. It's about learning how to look at yourself and see what's the change that you need to do, but also then what are the changes about the people around you that you need to do to help you to get through the conflicts that life is going to throw at you no matter what.
No, and I think, I mean, you can find these lessons in any book in any subgenre of romance. And like, I don't like to say that we are writing lessons or that every book has to teach a lesson, but I do think that they, as the person who said that it helped them kind of figure out how to explore, because I know it certainly helped me process like some emotions I had with that. And then also kind of with friend breakups and kind of deal, seeing that in the book, these people were able to come back together, that could be the fantasy aspect, like some as other aspects of romance, but it still is a good thing to model and for people to say, okay, well, this is a way I could handle that. Just the same way with romantic relationships. But I do think that one thing I noticed in all three of your books was kind of an emphasis on the parental relationships and like family relationships and how each of the characters kind of dealt with that in their own ways and how that also affected all of the other relationships in their lives. So Sonali, can you talk a bit about Recipe for Persuasion, which isn't out yet, but there is the emphasis on, you know, first of all, her relationship with her father, and her father's death has had this profound effect on her that affects like literally everything she does. And also, you know, her relationship with her mom and trying to figure that out also has this effect. So can you talk a bit about like how you work that into the book? Because there is kind of a, like you mentioned earlier, there isn't kind of an emphasis on seeing the choices her mother had available, the choices that she has available, and kind of how, you know, how the choices they were given and the choices they take affect them, but also has had this kind of ripple effect throughout their family and kind of all ending up on Astronaut as she tries to navigate life.
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, there's, I think, naturally and obviously, childhoods are, you know, are blueprints for how we live life. We have to either work really hard to redesign them, or you know, or we build on them. And I think often also with stories, and I think with life, there are moments in your life of extreme trauma or of trauma when you might fall to the floor, and for the rest of your life you're basically laying there. And a lot of our stories are journeys of that moment when we decide to get up. And I think in all the books that I write, I'm very conscious of the moment where you fell and could not get up, and for the rest of your life a piece of you is lying in that spot. And that moment when you decide, okay, get up, right? And I think that that I try this with my own life when I'm feeling a certain way. I, you know, if I'm talking to friends who seem to be stuck somewhere, that would be the thing, right? I mean, you have to. And so I think that with Ashna, she has a very specific, I mean, she has a pretty traumatic childhood, because any childhood where you have, you know, constantly been abandoned by a parent, or any child who is made to feel unwanted or feels responsible for the unhappiness of their parent, that is a huge load for anyone to carry, and she carries it. And she is naturally also a very empathetic and sensitive soul, and so of course she's distraught by what has happened to her parents because of her, is what she believes. And I think that the moment when her father, and you know, there is trigger warning, there's suicide in this book. The book doesn't dwell on it, but it is, you know, I mean, she believes her father killed himself because of her, and she has, that moment has defined the rest of her life. And it's not an easy thing to you know, to heal from. And so for most of the book, it is her journey to forgiving herself for it, forgiving herself for blaming herself for it, and for everything else. And her relationship with her mother is very much mired in that, because there are reasons why her mother does what she does, but she blocks herself off from anything that would absolve her of her father's death, which is kind of things we do to ourselves, right? I mean, we self-sabotage, we find ways not to come out of our pain, because pain becomes a comfort, it becomes part of your identity. So it's and I also believe that as parents, the amount of damage that you can do to a child with a very small act is so high. It's the worst part about being a parent, right? I mean, it's like it's terrible to have that kind of power. because almost every one of our crazy tics and crazinesses in life come from something a parent said, right? Whether it was something as ridiculous as, wow, the neighbor's daughter looks so lovely in her shorts. And your mom never really said anything about your chubby thighs, but for the rest of your life, you're like carrying the wounds of chubby thighs, right? I mean, something even that minuscule can become part of your identity. And so as parents, we have. So I think that in all of my books, that power that parents have over you is very much a driving force of personalities. And it usually goes back, to your parents' and so this thing is generational and it comes down. And in this particular book, there is a very, because I'm also really not happy traditionally with how female relationships are shown, right? This whole idea that women pull each other down, that mothers hold their daughters back, all of that I'm sure has some basis, but I feel like these are stories we've been encouraged to tell to hold us back and to keep us boring, so to speak. And so I kind of try to explore the other side of female relationships. And in this particular book, I think the way the women treat each other and the aunts and the grandmothers and that support system is a very important part of how and why Ashna heals, or why her mother is finally able to find her way back to her daughter.
All right, so we are starting to run out of time. So I'm going to start taking questions from the questions and answers. If anyone has any questions, you can leave them in here. So looking,
what is that number?
I'll find some.
It says
The number is the upvotes. So I'll choose a question and then, so the one that has the most votes right now is, what trope did you first fall in love with when you started reading romance? Did you have a particular trope that you fell in love with when you started reading romance?
Fake engagement or marriage of convenience.
Oh, really?
That's like, that for me is just, I'm right there for that.
Well, I have a recommendation for you. There's this book called Island Affair.
On my list.
Probably for me, I feel like what draws me the most is like the friends to lovers. I think in part, probably because I'm not a risk taker. So part of what draws me to that friends to lovers is that whole, will they or won't they? Like you have a good thing going. What happens if you cross that line and it doesn't work out and then you have nothing? So for me, like there's like an extra level of angst about, are they going to decide to like mess up this good thing they already have potentially or not? And then when they step across how that, so for me, I'm typically drawn to like a friends to lover. I've never thought I would write a fake engagement, but I love the wedding date. And I think that was probably like in my head some. So
for me, I think it's second chance at first love, because
You've written really good ones.
Every second book I've written is that. And I have to stop now because I need therapy if I write another second book.
But you're a master. You're a master of second chance.
I'm writing now. And I'm writing a second chance now. And I always feel like when someone asks me that question, I should say whatever I'm writing now, because I better like what I'm writing now. But
there is some level of second chance often in my books that are not second chance. There's been some sort of cosmic kind of, because that really fascinates me too, like the two particles of cosmic dust passing in the in the night kind of thing. And so even with Bollywood Affair, they had that moment when they were kids. I always have something. The one I'm writing now is is the Sense and Sensibility book in this series, and they had one magical night, not in a sexual sense, but one magical night of connection way back when that they never took anywhere. So I'm fascinated by that lost chance and having it again. But also I think what we're trying to capture in romance novels is that completely like and all encompassing love, right? And I think that you're only really that stupid when you're really young. So the way that you fall in love when you're 13 and 16 and 18, you're never that vulnerable again. We build armor, right, as we grow up. And so I think that's the fascination of it, that craziness that we have and that openness and that vulnerability we have when we're young. You can never make that kind of connection again. And so that's the fascination with, and now I'm here, like I'm talking to my therapist, but that's my
So did you like that thread then, and to kind of bring it back around to Crash Landing on You?
Yes. See,
No, don't
Exactly.
tell them. Don't tell them anything.
Okay. I'm not going to say anything more, but there's a really good thread. So like basically go watch it so we can come back and talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, every romance trope is in there. So
We're also
the soundtrack to Crash Landing on You is really good. Is good, like really emotional writing music. The soundtrack.
Stop, Briss.
The soundtrack.
You mean
All right. Okay.
the song she's searching for?
Okay, we're gonna do another question now.
It's on Netflix. Someone's asking where is it? It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix, and everyone watch it because this is actually just a Crash Landing on You fan club, and we're going to be discussing it every date night. So you need to know.
Yes, totally.
Do you have a romance? What, Nikki? The first question was from Essie. The second question is, what are some romance pet peeves for y'all? What's something that always gets under your skin when it pops up in a book?
I don't know if I have one.
I do. I have one.
Oh, really? I guess I try to stay positive. So if it bothers me, I try not to. I just try to like look past it.
I mean, there's really, if you do it well, there's really nothing that will put me off. But something that will immediately give me anxiety in a romance is if there is a birth control mishap. Really, that is it. I mean, it can be done really well, but it will stress me out while I'm reading. Do you have a recommendation for me?
Recommendation? Are you asking Kate?
No, I thought you were raising your hand.
No, I was raising my hand because I thought about the one thing that I cannot forgive an author for, and this is terrible, is keeping a child from a parent. So Secret Baby, to me, we've had so many. So last date night, we had a discussion about tropes and least favorite tropes and favorite tropes. And like, there was this consensus about Secret Baby not a consensus for some of us, but also how, we also have Secret Baby books we love, like Miss Bev's Destiny Surrender.
Oh yeah.
And then Rebecca made a very good point that all kinds of secret babies are a very real thing. Like most people's families have secret babies. And so when
I'm with you, Sonali.
there's a cousin that pops up, an aunt who shows up, and it's like, oh, yeah, that was. So secret babies are actually, when you think about it, realistic on some level. And then she also made a good point that sometimes there's a good reason to not tell someone.
There's
we can argue that. She's like, but she basically was like, sometimes people suck.
No, that's the problem, right? You don't want to follow someone who sucks.
I need really strong motivation, probably. As a leader.
I agree with this. But also, I just feel like since Rebecca said that, I have started to rethink my Secret Baby feelings, and I'm starting to come around more and being like, okay.
I feel like next Familia Zoom, I'm going to be like, okay, who here has the Secret Baby? That's what I mean. And our next Familia Zoom, I'm going to have to ask that.
Who has it? Who is the Secret Baby?
Do you want to know the answer?
The Secret Baby could be in the chat.
But here's the thing.
We see all of these things all the time with like ancestry, and then suddenly there's like a cousin in your inbox, and you're like, where does this cousin come from? These stories pop up all the time.
I know. So if it's a problem with, if it's an issue with security, you're talking the mob, like if it's safety, I can understand it. But to knowingly, and here's, okay, so here is what really bothers me. If you are keeping a child from a parent, you better have a really good reason.
Right.
But then if you're going to turn around and say, oh, this person is now going to be my love interest because he's so lovely. Like, he's so lovely, you kept, his child from him for 16 years. Like, what does that make you?
So, and then it comes down to the same thing of all pet peeves, which is if it's done correctly with a good enough reason,
motivation.
Then
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go to a date night question for now. I'll get back to the question box in a few minutes if anyone has a question before we go. But I would like to know what is the best thing that is not crash landing on you that you have watched in the last few weeks that is romance based, that you have watched, and then we'll come back around to what you have read. But first, have you watched anything good that you would recommend to the attendees to watch immediately?
Well, I will say I had never watched a complete K-drama. I had seen like splashes of it because my parents and I all live together. My papi is a big romance fan. And so I had seen like snippets of him watching K-drama, but so I could give you like a list of 6 that I've watched. So like DM me or I can put it in my Facebook group. But if aside from K-drama, and I do have to say thank you to Kwana Jackson because she started my K-drama fixation. Sonali asked her for a list and I nosy read the list and then started watching. But anyway,
you're welcome.
Outside of K-drama, I watched, and this is on Hulu, but there is a show called The Bold Type, and
That's a good show.
It revolves around these 3 young girls, like in their 20s, and they all work for like a Cosmo-esque type magazine, and just the varied relationships that they all have, the situations. It's really, they're like 4 seasons, and yes, I've watched all 4 seasons. But it's a really, really well done show, like talking about girlfriends and how they help each other and all of that, along with they're different generations. Like these young girls, there's also like the editor of the magazine is just this really strong, intelligent, empathetic woman who is successful in her career, does have a family, does deal with issues. So I feel like all around the show, they deal with different, like at one point there was someone like the issue of BRCA, the BRCA gene and breast cancer comes up. And so they deal with a lot of societal issues, a lot of friends and love relationship issues. It's really well done.
Okay, so The Bold Type.
The Bold Type, it's on Hulu.
Yeah, I watched, I think Sonali will appreciate this, but I watched the new Emma. And I thought it was fantastic and it was beautiful to look at. I thought it was so beautifully shot, and the sets were gorgeous and the costuming was really beautifully done. And so I don't know, I've had a difficult time concentrating over the last couple months. I can't imagine why. There's nothing going on. And so that I really enjoyed because it was like so visually interesting that I just think it held my attention.
Where did you watch it? Where did you see it?
I think it was still whatever in theaters, so I had to like pay through Amazon to get it. But I really loved it.
But you can get it through Amazon if you buy it, or like rent it or whatever. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, and Sana?
That interestingly, Emma was the last not social distancing thing I did was go to the theater and watch Emma.
Did you like it?
I have opinions. We can discuss offline. It was too bright.
Okay.
For me. Like it was too bright, white, shiny for me. Like just blindingly perfect.
Yes.
So I like my stories to have some grit, and I feel like to remove all grit from a Jane Austen novel for me kind of was a little bit like.
I wonder if I had seen it sort of stay at home order. I wonder if I would have felt differently about it.
Yeah.
You know, that's interesting.
Like the K-drama, that's part of what I needed. Like
Yes,
I was having trouble like concentrating on writing because just so much stress and emotion, you know, on so many different levels. And so the sweetness, yeah, the K-drama has conflict and there are times that you cry, but like the sweetness of it, I needed. Someone also said in here that they're watching Never Have I Ever. And that is a show that Mindy Kaling, like, is one of the producers. It's on Netflix. And I did watch that one also. Like, it's just one season. Really, really well done. I really loved that one too. It's like, it's a YA kind of, but it's called Never Have I Ever. And that's a good one.
I've watched some things that haven't been good in the last 2 weeks, but I will say that people in the comments are talking about watching Pitch. They just put Pitch, the Fox series, onto Hulu, and everyone should watch that.
Okay.
There's only one season, unfortunately, but if everyone watches it, maybe they'll maybe they'll renew it and make a second season.
Is that the girl is a pitcher?
Yes.
Okay.
She's a pitcher, and Mark Paul Gosselaar is like the older catcher, and they have a really great dynamic, and it's really good. And it unfortunately got canceled, but you know, other shows have come back, so everyone watch it on Hulu, so they can bring it back.
Yes, and if you haven't seen Hentefied on Netflix, that's only one season, but that's really good too.
Nice too. I went looking for Mr. Ree and other shows that he is in from Crash Landing, and ended up watching Memories of Alhambra.
Yeah.
Yes, I watched that too.
But you know, it's not the same. The romance is incredibly disappointing, but the gaming.
I need more at the end. I'm just going to say that.
The game.
Go on.
But the point of the show is that it's Jane Eyre. So the
what?
Sonali.
Toledo. Now I'm like, I got to rewatch that.
As I was watching it, I was like, oh, this is so frustrating. And then I was like, wait, think about, it's not completely Jane Eyre, but think about some of the relationship beats, the relationship between that hero and the girl, how they meet when she's all meek and then she suddenly like stands up for herself. And I feel like it's a remix of Jane Eyre with all of that video game stuff.
Without the crazy lady in the attic?
Yeah, that's
she was there. His ex-wife.
Yeah, the game was I think for me, again, it's the time that I watched it, right? Watching it in this time, the oppressiveness of being stuck in something that is so incessant and impossible to get rid of was a little too close a metaphor. Yeah. so initially it was exciting. And then by episode 14, 15, you're like, let the man go, let him breathe. You know, it was, and it just made me so anxious that he just, you know, he's literally can't walk down a street without someone shooting at him. And it just was crazy. And so he's fabulous.
Cinderella and Four Knights, they're younger. So, but I don't know, like early 20s kind of, but the main hero in Cinderella and Four Knights has some really good declaration, like monologues or whatever, right? Some lines that you're just like, oh, yeah.
All right. Each of you give me one comfort read that you have read during the last few weeks, or that you generally turn to when you are unable to read new books.
Okay, so I can tell you, like, one I just read, I just got to read an arc, and it's a book that doesn't come out until December, but as soon as it's on pre-order, I'm pre-ordering it, even though I've already read it. But I read Denise Williams' How to Fail at Flirting. It was fantastic. I like, like the romance, the passion, the real life, like the issue, the conflict that the heroine is dealing with, like the personal is really, it's an important issue, but it's so all the way around awesome book. I think when I'm wanting to like read for inspiration, honestly, I will say like Sonali's Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors. When I was reading that one and Barbara O'Neill's The Lost Recipe for Happiness, when I need like inspiration as a writer, like because I know I'm going to be inspired as a reader, I will read like a chapter from one of those two books because I get so engrossed in the book and I feel like so much emotion as a reader that then it compels me to go back to my writing because I hope to try to evoke the same thing in my reader. So either The Lost Recipe for Happiness, Barbara O'Neill, or one of Sonali's.
Nice.
So I'm actually currently reading Sonali's book, Recipe for Persuasion. It's delicious. But if I go back to an old book, usually it will either be The Hathaways from Lisa Kleypas. Just because like as a unit, I think those function really well for comfort reads because the sort of family unit is so easy to pick up any book in that series. So that's a common, if I'm feeling really low and I'm having a difficult time concentrating or something, that's a series I'll go back to.
Nice.
I think what I've recently read is an arc of Alexis Hall's boyfriend material.
Oh, I hear that's so good.
And, hold on. Oh gosh, there's boyfriend material. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It comes out, I think, in July or August. And oh my God, can he write? It's insanely good. It's classic British rom-com. So one minute I was like squirting tea all over myself and hyena laughing. And the other minute I was just like, tearing up. And it's your favorite, Kate, your favorite trope. It's a fake boyfriend.
That's what I like.
What's amazing about it is that right from the beginning, the fake is in quotation marks. So it's almost like they have this lovely thing going on where they know it's not fake, but they're calling it fake. And it's just delicious. It's this guy who's a complete screw up and this guy who is, upstanding perfection. And it's the most delicious thing I've read in a very long time.
Nice.
Can't wait.
Nice.
And do you have a comfort read?
So again, I think love lettering is a comfort read for me for sure. And anything Lisa Kleypas would be again. I think two for me are like Again That Magic by Lisa Kleypas and When He Was Wicked by Julia Quinn. Like those two books are magic. Like
I'm gonna read Lisa describing this bedroom. You really like that.
I don't know how she, like, whatever she does with language and structure of sentence, it's just something I've never seen anyone else be able to do.
Nice.
And again, that magic is a second chance. Is the classic original second chance book. And when he was wicked, there's just some sort of magic to that book. Like I just don't even know what it is. It's just magic.
Okay, so our day is unfortunately almost over. Before we go, can you tell us what you are working on now, if you can, or what's up next for you? Kate?
Well, I'm working on a book now that will be out early next year, and it's another standalone romance. And you all know that I'm very fussy about talking about things before they're done.
That's fine.
I'm not going to say
standalone next year.
What I will say is that I think the blurb is coming out in June, so watch for it.
Ooh. Okay.
Nice. I am working on Ana Maria's story, so it's book 2, and it is a second chance romance. It's her high school sweetheart Alejandro who went off. You learn kind of a little bit in book 1 because obviously Ana Maria is in book 1, and so he has gone off. He's like an adventure and commercial photographer, and he has not been back to Key West in a little over a decade because when he left, there was a huge rift between him and his father, and he's forced to come back to recover. He's got an injury, and so he's back on the rock, as he calls it, not wanting to be there, and it's the first time that they've seen each other live, since he left right after high school. So it's a second chance romance. And you also get to meet Enrique's potential love interest later on at the end of book 2. So that part's been fun. Trying to plant little seeds that don't I don't put myself in a corner like with book 3, but that
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know if we've said the title yet, so I won't say the title. But I did see a mock-up of the cover, so I'm hoping like in the in the next month or so we might have the cover for book 2.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm working on book 3 in the Rajes, and it is Yash's story. He is the oldest brother who's running for governor, and and he is. And at the beginning of the book, and it's a Sense and Sensibility spin, and I'm hoping that they will call it Incense and Sensibility, because the heroine is a yoga instructor who also makes incense.
I love it. I think that's awesome.
So
They have to now. They have to.
Right, my son came up with that one when I was 5 years ago thinking about these books. But he is essentially he at one of his campaign rallies is shot at, and this whole absolute control he has over his life crumbles because his bodyguard takes the bullet for him, and since he can't be sent to a therapist, he is sent to his sisters. He has 3 of them. Their friend who is a yoga guru and a stress management coach, and of course for all the world to see, he's already engaged to someone else, and there is no cheating because I will not try cheating, but he's basically painted himself into quite a corner over the past 2 books, and I am having quite the time getting him out of that corner right now.
It's gonna be so good.
I know. I'm so excited.
We've all done great. Thank you all so much for hanging out tonight. Thank you to everyone who came to hang out with us.
Oh, yeah.
And
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you so much.
This was fun.
This was so fun. Thank
We'll
you.
have to
Good night, everyone.
have a conversation on Twitter.
Yes, look everyone up on, if you are not already following them on Twitter and on Instagram. Kate, I will say that there was a plant question for you. I'm sorry that I did not get to the plant.
Ask me about plants online.
You can ask Kate who is her favorite plant character in a book on Twitter. And as you know, watch out for the news of the blurb for Kate's book, the cover for Pris's book, and upcoming news for Sonali's book and her book, which is out in 2 weeks. Yay. So again, thank you all for coming, and see you on Twitter, and see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Adios.
I think it's still stopping.
Okay.
So
It says live.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
still live. I'm gonna have a drink.